And welcome to Conservative Talk.
Guess who's back? Back again. Trump is back. Tell a friend.
And oh, how the mighty have fallen.
And the false prophet is going to be going after split ticket voters.
And because of that, Jamie and I are going to give you the reasons why Herschel must win this runoff.
And in the conspiracy corner, you know, Buck's been telling us about the fake news media and how they're trying to start World War III. Well, we're going to give you an example of it.
So stay tuned because you're never going to want to miss any of this.
Boom.
And welcome back to Conservative Talk. My name's Justin.
And this is Jamie.
As always, we like to make sure that we remind our viewers to make sure they're hitting the like button and the share button on all of the content that we produce on any of the platforms that you do running across any of our content on. Also, make sure you're hitting the subscribe button. That way you will always be in the loop on any of the content that we produce, and you'll never miss a single moment of Jamie's incredibly infectious laughter, and you'll always be able to see that amazing smiling face.
Even those who think I'm a dictator.
And we like to encourage our viewers to go to our website, and that's conservativestalk.org, and hit the sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner and the lower right-hand corner, and help us out with what you're able to, because it is because of our sponsors that Jamie and I are able to continue to produce our content and spread it out on a global basis with the mindset of one day, Jamie and I finally being able to take over the world and right all wrongs. And with that in mind, Jamie, how about you give our viewers the first reminder?
Don't forget to boycott hometown headlines.
Mm-hmm.
The liberal news is almost dead all the way around. And this is just the first avenue. So once we get rid of hometown headlines, then the next one's up on the ticket.
We'll aim for CNN next.
Yes. It's slowly creeping in down to Atlanta to take out the big boy.
Absolutely. So you want to give your second reminder?
11 days. It's been 11 days since we put Stacey Abrams and the Democratic ticket out to pasture.
Mm-hmm.
Kudos, everyone. Kudos to everyone in the state of Georgia.
Well done. Well done. It was a hard-fought victory that was well-earned.
Well-earned. Chop on. Don't chop it off.
Yeah, chop on, but don't chop it off. There you go. Chop on, but don't chop it off. We'll have to make a hashtag of that.
Yeah.
All right. And Jamie, how about your last one?
It is 17 days until the Senate runoff, and we need every single person to get out there and work hard so that Herschel can continue to run.
Okay. The title of that being "Excise the False Prophet." When I think of that, I kind of think of the old lady from that movie. What was it? Poltergeist.
Yeah.
This state is clean.
Once we get rid of Raphael Warnock, then Herschel will cleanse the state of Georgia from its,
especially the Senate. At least cleansing the Senate with it. And with that, we do like to take a moment to make sure that we recognize and thank our affiliates, and our first one being our national affiliate, and that's Net News Network. So Net News Network is a compilation of local grassroots broadcasters, newscasters, content creators from across the entire country that really focus on kind of localized media. That's where they specialize in. So if you're really interested in getting a little on the ground firsthand perspective, make sure you're going to netnewsnetwork.net and checking out and seeing what some of the other content creators have on their platforms. We also like to give a quick thank you to Veterans for America First. So Veterans for America First is a political grassroots organization that is on the front lines, fighting in the trenches in the political battles to ensure that America remains the greatest country in the world. And they do that through their media arm, and that's Vet Voice. So Vet Voice is the content creation platform that they put out these America First content creators on and really spread the message and push the message so that everyone can have the opportunity to come in and check out some of these content creators. and get this message across. So with that in mind, Jamie, how about let's jump right into our first topic, and that is
Trump is back. Trump is back.
We all knew it was coming, but it became official this week.
Yeah. I mean, and out the gate, he's already made some people upset.
Well, he was going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
Oh man, but yes, he's come out. He's made his announcement that he is going to run for president again in 2024. That would make him the second president to have non-concurrent presidential terms.
Yep.
So, that's going to be a big one, and seeing him do that.
Yeah, if he's a Republican nominee, then we have to stand behind him and make sure that he gets out there and, make our country great again.
Mm-hmm. Which he did very well the first time.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm excited to see where this is going to go.
I am too. I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic as we kind of like get into the next cycle of things, because now it's getting ready for a presidential year. We're going to see who else may think that they can hop on that ticket and go against him, or is Trump going to be the sole nominee from the Republican Party, which is going to be even more interesting if he is or isn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually probably the most interesting part about it, is seeing who thinks that that they could have the opportunity or even the possibility of knocking out the Republican kingmaker.
Yeah, and it's going to be the real thing is going to be how well the party as itself is going to bounce back from whatever decision the party makes. And what I mean by that is, for the longest time, Republicans have had this issue of we go nasty in primaries, and then we put too many sound bites and too much garbage out there against other Republicans, and then next thing you know, the media and the left take it and kind of use our own words against us, even though we kind of band together to kind of campaign for whoever our nominees are. And so that's going to be a major thing, is that we band together, because there's no way we can last 4 more years of Joe Biden, regardless what do you think of President Trump or any other candidate that may come out. Whoever the nominee is, we got to stand behind them.
Not just Biden, any Democrat nominee that gets put up, because he still hasn't said whether or not he's going to run.
This is true too.
Yeah, although I would like to see the rematch there. That could be an interesting.
That could be really good. 2 80-year-old men going at it, 78 and 80 something. I'm just saying.
A lot of things just came to mind when you said that, but out of respect, I'm not going to say it. Yeah, that could get a little interesting. But yeah, no, it's definitely going to be an interesting next 2 years. Trump being the first and the only presidential candidate that has announced from either side. We're likely going to be inundated with a wide swath of people that are going to try and potentially come in and challenge him, or at least I think there will be. I do think that there will be a big ticket that's going to try and come in and say that this is not the party of Trump anymore.
Yeah, there's been some speculations on who's going to come in. Like the people who talked about Ted Cruz running. Mm-hmm. People who talked about Mike Pence, Ron DeSantis. Yeah. You've seen
Nikki Haley.
Yeah, a whole gamut of different views and different viewpoints, with their own following as to who will lead the Republican Party going into 2024.
It's all going to be about who can excite the base the most and have the biggest turnout. Although I will say, can kind of be a little interesting if there is not a Democrat nominee, or not a nominee, but if there's not a Democrat challenger, or if it's not an open race, if it's just Joe Biden on the ticket, I would be willing to bet that we're going to see a lot of party jumpers, like what we saw in the primary.
Yeah. Can you imagine if Joe Biden doesn't run and both parties are putting up nominees for the next president at the same time?
That'll be interesting. Be 2016 all over again.
Because then at that point, it's going to be both parties again trying to determine what direction they're going in and what direction to take the country.
And we saw where the Democrats thought they were wanting a moderate, and they have got this radical left-leaning autistic, or not autistic, but this guy with Alzheimer's up there who's just lost every bit of cognitive responsive.
Yeah. Like, well, yeah, they knew what they were doing. They didn't bring a moderate up there. They bought Obama 3 up.
Well, yeah, especially with all of his staff and personnel in his offices, because as the old saying goes, personnel equals policy.
Yep.
And by bringing Obama, or bringing all of Obama's old folks through there, we're seeing a lot of and getting a lot of that.
Yep.
But we do have Trump back as the candidate as of right now, the only candidate on the ticket. There is a year and 3 months left before the close of the nomination, or for the close of the nominating period. So there's a lot of time for other people to get on it. And from what we understand, a lot of people are considering making that bid.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, Nikki Haley, at one point there was a lot of discussion about her running for president. That's going to be interesting. Former representative for the UN. That takes the party in one direction. Ted Cruz would take the party in a completely different direction. DeSantis is a little bit more of a moderate version of Trump.
I disagree with that.
What I mean by that is that's the closest you're going to get to those two. I
would say he's more of a calm or a controlled conservative to use a point of rather than moderate or moderated Republican, maybe
a moderate nationalist. That's an interesting way to put it. It's not as far right as Trump.
I would disagree. I would. Every policy that Trump had put up and put in place is something that Florida has thrived off of,
or has already, or did previously,
yes,
as a state,
except for the whole COVID lockdown, which Trump chided DeSantis for opening his state up a little early, even though
same thing
it was still after Kemp had opened up the state. So Florida was not the first state; Georgia was actually. So, but
yeah, I see where you're going with that. It's that one in itself. If DeSantis hops in the race, I think personally, 2028 would be his year.
I do too. I would much rather, and personally, I would much rather see DeSantis coming on the 2028 ticket and taking the next 4 years to show just how Republican policies can influence and make a state a much better place to live, as opposed to going in at the national level where the likelihood of getting anything done is slim to none.
Yep.
Because even if you have an incredibly strong Republican president in office and say we still control the House, you still have to have that 60 vote margin in the Senate in order to get through anything that you want to. And what we've seen as of late, likely not going to ever happen again. Which I'm good with that. I'm good with that in the sense that the federal government should not be a body that ebbs and flows and changes like what your true democracy does. It shouldn't be the body that just reacts to every single thing. It should be deliberative. It should be thought processed. It should have everything in line and everything in place to make long-term decisions for the nation.
Correct. I 100% agree with that. You more of your web and flows, short term things. That's your local level or your state level type of things. Those are situations that are adjusted based upon a state level and the feel of the people inside of the state. Federal government, federal policy should be methodical in the way that policies are drafted, written, explained and debated. I completely agree that it's a problem when you have a 14-foot tall regulation, a federal regulation statute. It shouldn't be that big because that should have taken the 200+ years, 250 years that we've been here in order to create something half the size of that.
And that was just over 1 year.
Correct.
Yeah, I believe the gentleman that we heard speak, the actual the legislation that has come through both the House and the Senate and passed the president's desk over the past year is minuscule. I mean, we're talking what did he say? It was like maybe 5 to 6 inches thick, but the regulatory laws that were passed or the regulatory ordinances is really what they amount to because they're not laws. They were made by your alphabet agencies, by unelected bureaucrats who were nominated to these positions in the past, and it's 14 feet tall. That's where we're at with that.
The codes of federal regulation, CFR. That is what that's what the formalities of everything in the agencies abide by
and enforce and have the power of law
on a federal statement, on a federal level. And it's crazy to me that like when instead of trying to find common ground or taking things that there aren't common ground off the table at a federal level, they just decided that, okay, well, we'll just replace who's the head of the agency and allow the agency to enforce these, to a certain degree, as even the Supreme Court said, these unenforceable, regulatory laws. But
yeah, it's that is a sincere problem of which I will say President Trump, within his first couple of weeks of being in office, made it to where for every one that was passed, 2 of them had to have been destroyed. So we saw that shrinkage of it there.
Yeah, well, that's what we saw starting with the EPA. A lot of things were pulled back during Trump's administration for the EPA, which was big for a lot of people, especially if you're in the fossil fuel industry or if you're in, construction as a whole. And similar tactics when we start talking about mitigation. Justin, if I've had this conversation online, the cost of mitigation on private business and even local governments right now is excruciating and painful on the taxpayer. And if that's not looked at real soon, you know what I mean? Like we're going to have an even bigger problem.
Yeah, especially when gas is getting ready to start skyrocketing again.
Yeah, because it goes for everything, right? So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, right? So you have to pay for stream or wetland mitigation credits if you were to, go into a wetland area or if you were to pipe a stream. And that cost has risen, especially in the state of Georgia, into millions. And so what the problem is now is they say that, free market, right? Well, there's a reduction of credits. Well, when you have the federal government who controls the number of credits and everyone has to buy them except for the federal government, state and local governments have to buy them, private business has to buy them. You're like, but you can't, I can't go to Wells Fargo and buy these credits. I have to go to a bank that's set up and established by the federal government. So there may be only 4 or 5 in my area. That's a problem.
Free market.
That's a problem.
Corner of the market there. Yeah. So hopefully when Trump gets reelected and gets back into office, if that's who the American people choose to do it, this can be addressed and can be, I'm going to use Jamie's terms, mitigated.
That's it.
And with that, we do like to take a moment to remind our viewers to make sure that they are hitting the like and the share button on any of the content they come across that we produce. Make sure you're also hitting the subscribe button. That way you'll always stay up to date on all of our content, and you'll never miss a single moment of Jamie's infectious laughter. Although he seems like he's kind of melancholy today, somewhat. And we also like to encourage our viewers to make sure they're going to our website at conservativetalk.org and helping us out, because it is because of our sponsors that we are able to continue to produce this material and really push it out as much as we are currently. And we do this in the hopes that Jamie and I will ultimately be masters of the universe, and we will rule everything that we see.
One day I'll be like Silver Surfer.
You'll be like Silver Surfer, and then you go and ready the planets for me to come in and take over.
Whatever. As long as I'm left alone, I don't care.
Oh man. And with that, let's get into our second topic that we were talking about, and that is how the mighty have fallen. So if you are unaware of one of the major things that has happened in Georgia over this past week, and that being that the Fulton County judge, Judge McBurney, has declared that the Life Act or the heartbeat bill as being void, meaning that it has no force or effect in law because it was passed while Roe v. Wade was still the quote-unquote law of the land,
which is still I'm sorry, but that's the dumbest ruling I've ever heard in my entire life, right? Because
really is.
Because the whole point is like you were in court to argue it, but you want to say that it was void because the time that you submitted the case file to argue it, that was still the law of the land, even though now that's not the law of the land. So you want us to go back and just resubmit the bill through the assembly now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned, pass it again, and then make it the law of the land? That's the dumbest thing I have. Just approve it, unless you just didn't want to be the one who approved it, and then just say so. like
so the
it's
reason,
not that hard.
The reason why we say the mighty have fallen is because McBurney was the one that said that Burt Jones cannot be brought up during these investigations, and really put his foot on the ground as far as the Trump electors for the this investigation that's going on in Fulton County. He's the one that really threw the brakes on it.
Oh, so he made a trade.
It would kind of seem this in some instances. It would seem that way.
He made a trade to still seem fair.
Yes.
Knowing that we could go back and just repass it.
Well, maybe, because it only passed the House last time by one vote, and we have a smaller margin now in the House than we did originally.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I think that there'll be like one or two modifications, and then it'll pass again.
Well, let's hope that. So the state has appealed his decision, and it's going up to the Supreme Court. So let's wait and see what they have to say about it before we really jump into it too much as far as really getting worked up and amped up about it. Although
too late.
Yeah, exactly. I agree 100% with Jamie. This man's decision on this was by far one of the worst decisions that I have ever come across.
Like, that's wild. Like, that's it's almost arbitrary. Like
so the law may have been at the time under Roe been void, but now that the Supreme Court has sent this ability back down to the states, the law is now still on the books. It's still viable. It was still law at that time. Whether or not it was void to begin with, it is still law. Now it has the force, it has the effect and the force of law. And that's the argument that the state's making, is that McBurney came out, made a personal decision with judicial activism, and decided, hey, I don't like this so much, so I'm just going to say, no, it's not viable that way.
Yep.
It was truly confusing when I first read his decision on there. Because just like what you said, he's taking something and he's making his personal choice and saying, okay, You passed it earlier, but it didn't count that time. So now you got to do it again. It makes no sense whatsoever. But that's what he's saying. But it does look like it will be, well, it has been appealed, and hopefully the Supreme Court will uphold that it is enforceable as law, like the federal courts have already done. So, yeah, it's truly crazy to think, and the whole reason why he decided to make this decision was because of the week of when, or the time period of when abortions can and cannot take place. He was saying because at the time the law was passed, it was 22 weeks. And the heartbeat bill, being 6 weeks, said, well, that part cannot be enforced. So as an effect, the rest of it can't be enforced.
Doesn't make any sense. None whatsoever.
But, what kind of makes me wonder is if he's up for re-election in 2 years as a Superior Court judge.
That's why I think
in
he made a
Fulton
trade.
County, had he come back and decided, well, this is enforceable, plus with what he sided with so far in regard to the this investigation into Trump and dealing with this call with the Secretary of State, kind of makes you wonder what he's Biden for there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because
he wanted it off his desk.
Oh, yeah. Well, not just that. If he came back and said, okay, this is law, this is enforceable, you're wrong about this, the heartbeat bill remains in effect as is, then he'll have some very tough competitors that are going to be funded from a lot of out-of-state money.
Well, that's what I mean, right? Because if he makes the decision that he made, gets it off his desk, he now can campaign and say, no, I show fairness to everyone. I didn't believe in the heartbeat bill, yet I still believe that, Burt Jones should have been investigated. I'm fair to all parties. That's how you run a re-election campaign for a judge. Whereas knowing that more than likely they make 1 or 2 changes, it's going back through the assembly and getting passed again by probably more than 1 vote.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. Although I will say, if he has any aspiration for higher office within the judicial system, this is really not the way to go with it. Because if he were to want, say, for instance, an appellate seat, those are typically appointed by the governor. Granted, there are elections and re-elections for those, but typically they are appointed for vacancies by the governor. You just shot down the governor's prime piece of legislation. You think you got an appointment coming now?
And the last time I checked, too, that there was a seat getting ready to open up on the appeals court.
Yes, there are. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely not making any friends with this whatsoever. And the fact that he has just ostracized so many loyal voters in around the state of Georgia and just really spit in the face of what the state legislators had worked so tirelessly on getting done, really just kind of says he's out there. This guy's a loose cannon. So appointments, I just don't see any of those in his near future.
He's definitely.
So what probably happened was he thought Stacey was going to win. So he went ahead and wrote that decision beforehand.
Oh God!
And just because she lost, he had already had that one submitted to get ready to be put out there, and just didn't want to change it.
Oh God! That means he's down there drinking the blue Kool-Aid. I don't know, because it's totally
some of that.
It's a totally different animal. Like when you're in the heart of it, you know this. Like when you're down, it just feels weird. Like it's like you only see Democrat signs inside of the perimeter, and you're like, you people are weird. Like, like y'all do not get out much at all. Like you only believe this because you only hit this little area.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's 159 counties, you only see 11 of them.
Yeah, if that.
Like.
Oh man, yeah, it's gut wrenching to think that because of this man's decision until the appeals court or until the appeal is taken up, abortion clinics are now going to be able to operate at the same capacity they were prior to the Dobbs decision.
Yep. It's awful. Poor babies.
Yeah.
Poor innocent little babies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hopefully this will be taken up quickly and will be addressed quickly and will come out within the favor of what it needs to be done. Because, I mean, think about this. If it's not done quickly and say, for instance, it takes until next April for a decision to be rendered, that's an entire another year that has to be done unless Kemp calls a special session. Because the General Assembly will be out by then.
Yeah. Because they'll wait till April in order to make a decision from the appeals court.
Potentially, yes.
Or,
well, it's an appeal to the Supreme Court.
No, yeah. Sorry, I'm thinking about that. Thinking about something else because they'll make their decision around June for the Supreme Court, unless they hear it early. And the hard part is, you're right, because it's not, since it's going to the Supreme Court, there's no point in trying to pass another version of the bill, because then you would be double having the law twice. So it'd miss this session. So then you have to come back and try to either have a special session or wait until the following January when session goes back in the lame year in order to try to pass something else after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Oh, what a wonderful web we weave.
Mm.
Yeah, because I'll have to look that up and find out when the Georgia State Supreme Court decides to take up appeals.
They usually try to take up appeals. They usually try to take them up between March and April. I don't know if they have a fall time frame, since this one kind of came out from, in the fall time, if they'll take it during a different time frame. I just know from previous experience that they usually will take something up between March and April and try to get a decision out by July.
Yeah, so that negates it. Anything being able to be done
in this session
within this calendar year.
Yep. Or within
outside of a special session. It's called special session.
Yeah, between this calendar year and next.
Mm-hmm.
Because that takes us to 2024.
Yep.
Because they won't make a decision until the end of the physical year.
Yeah. And then they'll so if they render the decision, or if the Supreme Court comes out with a decision that says, okay, it has to be passed again, outside of Kemp calling an immediate special session to work through this piece of legislation, which he has the purview to be able to do. He has that right and that ability to do. You're looking at not being able to get anything legislatively done on this issue until 2024, special session or the General Assembly session of 2024, which will be January to roughly early April, late March. So that's essentially an entire year of the 22-week, I guess, time frame being in place there. Although I'm curious if there's actually a Georgia law that says 22 weeks. I don't know. I have to look that one up.
I don't know.
Because if not, then what law are they going back to?
It could be Michigan, where there's it went back to the 1800s where they literally said 0. Not happening. Can't do it.
Yeah. I'm just curious about I'm curious about whether or not that's actually that's something I'm gonna have to look up after this one, and maybe we can add something in the comment section, kind of a PS, a little note there about when this actually or what the actual time frame would be, because Roe v. Wade has been sent back to the states. The states now decide and direct what their abortion laws and recommendations would be. So that being the case, Roe having no merit anymore, it becomes incumbent upon the states to set that term. What if there is no term that was previously set?
It goes two ways.
So it could be,
because if there's nothing that says 0, then it could be flat out murder.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it could be right up until birth,
which is what the Democrats want to do anyway.
Mm-hmm. But the judge said in his order 22 weeks. I'm just curious about where he got that 22-week mark at, because 22 weeks was Roe. So I wonder if there's something statutorily for Georgia.
So that makes sense, right? So, well, follow me down this rabbit hole. I wonder if there was a statute that the state adopted once Roe went into place.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm wondering if there was
something that was added,
a state statute that says 22 weeks,
which would kind of make sense, right? Because we rewrote the state constitution how many times since then? When Roe was passed, we probably would have wrote it like twice since then. Yep.
But still, it's not in the constitution. It's not in the state constitution.
It's valid. What I mean is, throughout that process, right, there would have been,
because it was federal law at that point in time.
What I'm talking about is it's federal law, but usually when you overhaul a state constitution, that's the changing of the mind frame and the thinking. So someone probably would have passed something around either time frame.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe not.
That's just where my head was thinking.
Mm-hmm. Maybe not.
Because if they didn't, then I really don't know what you were thinking. Yeah. Because then at that point, you're like, oh, it goes back to 22 weeks. Well, that's not the law either. So then it's 0 or infinity, which means that you pull something that was arbitrary, right, from something that's no longer a law, but says that this new law isn't valid because the old law that no longer exists is what you're basing off of. That's dumb.
So follow me down this one. Part of the heartbeat bill, which technically did not fall under the even the 6-week part of it, but it granted fetuses personhood. So with that in mind, it could be deemed murder after day 1 because of a fetus being considered a person, which was not part of the law. And I may be mistaken on this, but I don't believe I am. I don't believe that part was shot down and stricken.
Yeah, because the fetus is a person.
Mm-hmm.
It just has no voice at the moment.
Yes. So by the fetus being a person and that part of the law still being able to stand, it would be considered murder even after the first day after conception. I mean, the immediate point of conception. Now, that wasn't, I read part of his ruling. I didn't get all the way through it yet, but from what I read, that wasn't addressed in it.
Which is very interesting. Because then who would come on that end at that point to defend the child?
Well, it wouldn't be defending the child. It would be prosecuting.
Well, what I'm saying is, if it goes back,
provider.
Yeah, because it would have to be inside of the law.
It would have to be.
If he struck the law, then it goes back to 22 weeks. No, I'm thinking completely off base, right? Because even if it goes to 22 weeks and a portion of the law is repassed, you know what I mean? At that point, then who would defend the child? Would DFACS have an attorney? Would Georgia Life Alliance or someone of that nature come in to defend the child? I'm on a weird rabbit hole.
Yeah, I'm on a weird rabbit hole. There is no defending the child at that point in time. It's prosecuting the
I know.
Yeah, the providers and the mother, the parents at that point in time.
Mainly what I was
doing
thinking is if there is a gap in some form or fashion, right? Who defends the child? Period.
There is nobody.
No one.
The law's passed there for the defense of the
Which
child.
is why it's important for the law to be there, because no one is speaking on behalf of that unvoiced child.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I continue to have a problem with it, is because whether it's 0 to 22 weeks, whether it's not at all, or up until due date, who's speaking for the child?
It's supposed to be the state, but where that's going to land, who knows?
One man made that fate. Remember that.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. And with that in mind, we always like to remind our viewers to make sure they are hitting the like button and the share button on any of our productions that we do put out on all of our platforms, and making sure you're also hitting the subscribe button. That way you'll always stay up to date on all of our content, and you'll never miss a single moment of Jamie's incredible infectious laughter, although today it hadn't been coming out quite so much, but we'll get him there. I'll have to start tickling him here in a minute. We also like to encourage our viewers to go to our website at conservativestalk.org and help us out with what you're able to by sponsoring our show. It is because of our sponsors that Jamie and I are able to still continue to produce this content and put it out on a wide scale basis, so we can ultimately one of these days take over the world and rule with the iron fist. Don't say it. Don't say it. I knew where you were going, but don't you say it.
Bleep me.
No, no. I've already. And with that in mind, let's get into the next topic that we're talking about, and that is that the false prophet is now targeting those split ticket voters.
Yeah, so that's the name of the game, right? Is now that we're running for the runoff, Warnock is trying to think that he can come after split ticket voters. Whereas it's going to be Herschel and the Republican Party's job to make sure that everyone sees how awful of a person and how false this person is.
Absolutely. Yeah. For those who haven't really seen the numbers just yet, there was about a 200,000 vote difference between the highest Republican vote getter, that being Brian Kemp, and Herschel Walker. So 200,000 votes from across the state, or 200,000 people from across the state voted for Brian Kemp and Raphael Warnock.
2,000 in Floyd County alone, and roughly 11% of the total voters polled were voting for Brian Kemp and Raphael Warnock.
Which again is something I don't understand, but
I don't get it from a. Here's the thing, okay? I don't get it from a personal perspective, right? Because regardless of whether or not how you look at a candidate versus another, right? The policies that person is standing for and how that person will vote once they are elected is more important to me.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that's what we have to reinstill in people. You know, giving people the middle finger because they didn't like the backer of one candidate versus another is just bad politics. That's just a bad way of looking at things. No,
I completely agree with that.
Being sore because you don't understand it or think that it's.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that notion, because the fact that, you know, we've seen what Raphael Warnock does. We've seen that he stands with Joe Biden 96% of the time on every vote that he takes, and the 4% being that the Biden administration wasn't radical enough, wasn't as far left radical enough, or he just wasn't there in office that day.
Yep.
So we know that he is not the type of person that is going to make Georgia a better place. And they talk about how he's done these bipartisan pieces of legislation, but they're only giving that a half truth. By the bipartisan pieces of legislation they're talking about there is he voted in favor of legislation that had been passed out of committee by a majority vote and then sent to the floor, where it was then amended on the floor to have all of these just radical, crazy, far left stuffed right down its throat. And no Republican supported any piece of that legislation, but Raphael Warnock had his little bipartisan piece of legislation at that point.
One thing that was really big, and we touched on this in a previous show, was he was touting that he worked with Marco Rubio on something, but yet would strike down Marco Rubio's amendments in the same piece of legislation that he wants to champion being bipartisan on. And that's the lies that we're talking about, and the continual lies that we continue to talk about from him is because he wants to say all these things that when you really boil down to it, they're not even half truths. They're not the truth at all.
Yeah. And just keep in mind when thinking about some of these Republican members that he supported, Marco Rubio tried to stuff red flag laws down our throats at the federal level. So that's the type of Republican that Warnock's used to voting with. So yeah, he's every bit of a false prophet as what we've told you, because we're not taking anything and chopping it up and
yeah, I care less,
putting it out there and really kind of twisting anything. We're giving you the whole fact.
That's the reality of it. Yeah, the reality of it is that like his campaign is a lie.
Everything,
like it's a lie. We can go back to the clips that we showed to where I will never forget this. How can you call yourself a pastor and get up in front of what you think is only your people, your voters, right? And say something that said that God gave us a choice to kill babies. That is not even alluded to in scripture. Like that's nowhere near the Bible. I don't know what book you're reading. Like maybe say, I don't know. Like, I don't know where you made that up from.
Well, maybe he got it from, and this is just me thinking offhand, maybe he got it from Abraham. No. God asked him to sacrifice his only son.
No.
And then stopped him well before that happened as a test. But hear me out. Under Warnock, he's saying plunge the knife. But yeah, that's a good point to make with that, especially because of how we're really going to need every bit of what Herschel's going to be bringing. Then that's something we're going to get to here in just a minute. But we have to get out and get as absolutely many Republicans out to vote for Herschel as we absolutely possibly can, because of the fact that there were a large number of split ticket voters. So if the Democrat base is going to be turning out at the same level that they did, and then those Republicans who voted for Warnock there come out and vote for Warnock again, we're going to be kind of SOL in that sense.
Yeah, and we had to make sure that those individuals who voted for the Libertarian, that's the 2% that we kind of on a statewide level that we really need to hone in on. And the reason why I say that is this, right? If you made a definitive choice to vote for a Democrat and down ticket Republican, then you're trying to make a statement. If you voted for a Libertarian though, then
you just wasted your vote.
And you are the ones that we want to try to convince.
Yes, I would say that we need to really go back and re-engage those split ticket voters, although right now I'm not very happy with them at all. But they do need to be re-engaged. And not only do we need to really rally the base or rally the conservative base here in Georgia, we do need to target those split ticket voters.
Yep.
We need to show them that by selecting Warnock again, you are pushing for the demise of everything that we hold dear as this country.
Yep. And that's it. And this is not a time to be mad at Trump. This is not a time to be mad at Herschel or his campaign team. This is to save the country. That's the bottom line. Herschel's a great candidate, and we need to make sure that the rest of the Republican Party, those who, didn't vote for him, realize that.
Mhm.
Their campaign, some people were upset because it took their campaign a minute to get, their feet up under them. But that usually is what happens when you have a first time, candidate for any elected office. But Herschel, I think, is going to be doing great things inside the Senate.
I expect that he will too. And I'm going to be doing everything that I know I can do to really help bolster and drive that turnout.
Same
for that. And with that in mind, we again like to remind our viewers to make sure that they are hitting the like button and the share button on all of our content. Make sure you're also subscribing to all of our pages. That way you'll never miss an episode or miss hearing Jamie's laughter, except for this episode.
Just
make sure you're also going to conservativestalk.org and helping us out with what you're able to. It is because of our sponsors that we are still able to produce content and put it out on the scale that we do, so that Jamie and I can one day, in fact, rule the world. So just know that's what you're sponsoring. Jamie and I's ultimate takeover, global dominance. Jimmy's been kind of tight-lipped on that one.
There's so many things I want to say.
I'm watching him out of the side of my eye right now.
There's so many things I want to say.
And I'm making it to where I know he feels that I'm watching him. So, yeah. And
I thank God every day for Justin for making sure I stay out of trouble.
Likewise. Although, it's a little fun every now and then. We've had our moments.
Mainly last week. From both angles.
This week too. So let's jump into our next segment, and that is kind of explaining and talking about exactly why it is that Herschel must win this runoff.
And that's the big thing, right? This is what keeps it at 50-50. Even with that, this is how we make sure that we can have tools in the toolbox like the filibuster.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they were to get the majority on the Democrat Party, then we go into a whole tailspin of things. They will try to nationalize elections. They will try to, take away your ability to everything. I mean, we can go through the whole gamut of the things that they feel that they did not get done in the Biden administration the first go round, that they will go through and try to finish now. You're talking the rest of the Green New Deal. You're talking death to the filibuster. You're talking abortions at will. You're talking, once we lose the Senate, we're in a whole world of hurt.
Yes. So he hit on a big topic of that. With the filibuster, and just this is from my perspective on this and kind of looking at it. The filibuster in place right now is the one thing that is saving us from teetering over the edge and going to communism and socialism. It is with a 50-50 Senate, we will be able to maintain the filibuster in place. If we don't have
Republicans.
Well, if we don't have a quote unquote moderate Democrat decide that they would support ending the filibuster, because even with 50 of them on that ticket, the deciding vote's going to be Kamala, and that's 51.
Yep.
So that's keeping that in place. That's keeping that from being able to be pushed or keeping any agenda from being shoved down our throats. Now, to be completely and blatantly forthright with this, even if they do nuke the filibuster, none of their agenda or none of what they are wanting to do outside of one thing can be done over the next 2 years.
Yep.
And that's because we Republicans control the House.
Yep.
So
which is a good thing because even that was a little bit questionable beforehand, but we have crossed over to 218.
Yes. So if they were to quote nuke the filibuster and take the 50 vote threshold down just to 50, then they try and they ram through the rest of the Build Back Better deal. Well, that's never getting through the House.
Yep.
So it will never go to the president's desk. If they do that and then they try and pass a very strict, even more strict than what they've already done as far as gun control, never going through the House. Things along that nature are not going to be done over the next 2 years. It's what comes after that. So, say for instance, we lose control of all 3 houses again in the future. That's when we're looking at all of this radical agenda being pushed.
Well, here's the thing. I never say never because of the fact of like, we know what their agenda is. I have faith in some House members, but I have a lack of faith in the House.
Well, I say never. It won't be able to be pushed through in whole.
Yeah.
They'll parse out little pieces here and there, stick it in Republican bills, those little bitty issues that are in page 463 of 16,000 pages. That's where it'll fall into. But it'll never be able to be pushed through in one single block until we lose all 3 houses.
Correct.
However,
and then they'll do a reference to subsection whatever and create one new bill once they're there. That's why the filibuster is so important. And that's also why trying to maintain a 50-50 split is the best thing that we can do.
For now, yes. It's the best outcome of this scenario. However, there is one thing that if they do get that 50th person there, or they do get that 51st person there, that they will be able to do starting day 1 of the new Senate, and that is pack the Supreme Court or enter into any treaty agreement that they want. Because per the Constitution, with advise and consent, those are your 2 areas that they can ultimately do anything that they want to with.
Yep.
So with 51 Democrat senators there, you don't they will nuke the filibuster, get rid of that. And then by nuking that filibuster,
automatically pass.
Yep. Automatically be able to put through anything they want to.
Yep.
So yeah, they are, that's the big thing there, is we are voting not only for the soul of our country for this, but we are voting for protecting that institution of the filibuster, of which I will be blatantly honest with you, has driven me through the roof, filibuster. But in these circumstances, it has been our greatest savior.
Oh, automatically put us in World War III.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And force us to the table to sign a treaty, sign the revision of the NATO treaty, among other things that scare me that I don't want to scare the public with.
Yeah.
Because one thing they haven't talked about is the progression of NAFTA. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and why we were seeing so many migrant people coming in right now. Because remember, the North American Fair Trade Act was really supposed to start the creation of the United States of North America. But I'm not getting into that.
You're not wrong about that. That is a
because one thing
horrifying and terrifying.
Well, and here's the thing, right? The kickoff to it is to change. Fine, I'll do it. Right. Here's what scares me about the Senate. Okay. And the nuking the filibuster, them gaining control, everything else. You start to lay the groundwork for other territories becoming states. Once you revamp that process and revamp immigration and how people vote, which is 3 major things that will dynamically change how this country is. You nationalize elections, you create new states, and then the next thing would be certification transfer. Okay. Because we now do trade across all of North and Central America. The moment that we are now allowed for credentials to be transferred over, then that means that anyone, and reform immigration, right? You do those simultaneously. Anyone who comes in from Canada or Mexico, if you went to one of their universities, your credentials transfer over. And at that moment, we are a established border continent. That's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
Which is where they're going with this, right? Just to be blunt, that's the whole game. We started shying away from it after the 90s, but that's the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this administration's going for. That's why everybody wanted Hillary Clinton in, because she was supposed to be the one to like push all this through. Obama got his portion done. Now they got Joe Biden in here, who's supposed to get his portion done, which is to drop borders and nationalize elections. And then the next Democratic president will be the one who changes the Constitution and calls for a United States of North America. That's what we're trying to stop.
You heard it here first.
So, yeah.
So if you're not able,
that's why Justin tells me to shut my mouth sometimes, but whatever.
Now that everyone is sufficiently scared, we do like to remind everyone to make sure that they are hitting the like button and the share button on all of our content on any of the platforms that we put our content on. Make sure you are hitting the subscribe button as well. That way you'll never miss a single moment of our content or a single episode. You'll always be able to see and hear these first-person accounts of what's going on and what to expect, and you will always be able to hear Jamie's incredibly infectious laughter maniacally after he just drops the nuclear bomb on everything. And we also like to encourage our viewers to go to our website at conservativestalk.org and hit the sponsor tab and helping us out by becoming a sponsor so we can continue to produce a lot more of this content and spread it out so we can take over the world and stop this. Well, I guess if we do take over the world, we'll still stop it, but we'll just do it under different terms.
Yeah, that's the whole point, right? Like, because think like, you're really going. All right, when we get next segment, I'll just dabble into it. Why not? I don't care.
And with that terrifying thought and notion in mind, let's jump into the conspiracy corner. I'm kind of hesitant to bring it up.
Here's the thing, right? So let's talk about what happened first.
Yes.
So what happened first was there were missiles that hit Poland and killed 2 people.
Yep.
When this went off, the news immediately reported that Russia killed Polish citizens.
Mm-hmm.
That was a trigger to scare everyone.
Yep. It was during Russia's largest missile barrage since they had invaded Ukraine. And during this barrage, they made allusions or indications to that they targeted cities on the very outskirts of Ukraine, and they happened to cross over into Poland.
Yep. And
this is the Associated Press that made this.
Immediately reported that it was Russia that did it, right? Mm-hmm. Here's why. Is because the moment that happens, that means a NATO country was attacked, which would force all NATO members to go into war with Russia. Yep. But lo and behold, it was actually Ukrainian missiles.
The Prime Minister of Russia, the Prime Minister of Poland, actually convened a Security Council meeting of his national defense there for the explicit discussion of invoking Article 4 of NATO, which is attack on one is an attack on all, and everybody swarms. That's what they were trying to do. Even Zelensky came out and said, yeah, they attacked us. They shot us, or they attacked y'all. They are the ones that fired it. They did it. It was them. So all of y'all come over here and start fighting Russia now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he actually came out and said, okay, all right, they've attacked your NATO countries, so now y'all have to come over here and fight because of the treaty that you have. Come to find out, it was Zelensky that fired the missiles as part of their missile deterrent system. So it was Zelensky that actually fired these and killed Polish citizens.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, under that consideration, shouldn't we be going against Ukraine?
But that's not going to happen.
No, because our great and wonderful national defense, our head of national defense, Lloyd Austin, came out and said, ultimately, this boils down to it was Russia's fault.
Because, Russia attacked first. But see, this goes back to the whole point of not one country that has gone off the IMF standard and the US dollar as base has survived its leadership, which is part of the reason why some people are like, why we're aiding Ukraine and why the rest of the world is trying to stay out of this. From Gaddafi, Assad, Saddam, every single one of them, there's 7 total, who over the last 2 decades have moved towards going off of the world standard, the US dollar, and this is what has happened to every single one of them. Once you start moving away from the central banking system, this is what happens.
Mm-hmm. So the AP had come out and printed not really a retraction. That's not what they did with this. They went back and they corrected what they had said. And then they said that it was a high-ranking U.S. intelligence official that told them this.
Okay.
So that kind of makes me wonder, well, if it was a high-ranking U.S. intelligence official under the Biden administration, was it Biden that told them to tell them this? Well, and potentially trigger World War III.
It's a whole thing, right? Because they think that they now can win the Senate and move forward with the rest of the plan, because you have to divide from you got to go from 4 major superpowers.
Yeah,
you got to go from 4 down to 2, and then the 2 that they want to decide is Western versus Eastern ideology, and then World War III kicks off how you become one global society. And then through that, you change immigration. You allow anyone and everyone to move freely across the entire Western Hemisphere.
The world at that point.
Well, before you even get there, before you even get to war, right? You allow for anyone who comes in to vote for however you want them to. You completely do away with any form of nationalism, because then you're just saying, hey, we're all here. We're all America. Why are you being racist? Why are you excluding South America and Central America? We're all America. That's exactly what they're going to tell.
They're all Americans.
They're already building the narrative so that when they do make the transformation, or attempt to at least, their people are already built into it, which is why they want to change the curriculum, which is why you have generations now coming out saying that, borders are dumb. These are things that are being taught from an early age, that when it happens, all they want is peace-loving people, so that everyone who has to go to war, they will support it, not seeing the carnage, not seeing the loss of what is actually happening or what's going on or what they're trying to do.
That's something that's interesting coming from a war hawk too.
Yeah. Hey, look, it's I don't know how to say it like properly, other than I believe in standing for the United States of America. What's not going to happen, though, is you're not going to bait us into war to end the United States of America, which is what they want to do. They want to end and reform the United States of America and make something else. Not in favor of it.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. But yeah, it's albeit not surprising that this happened. That you had the Associated Press coming out and throwing this out there like that, because they get so much wrong anyway now. It's crazy to think that because of this reporting that they were putting out there, they were essentially stoking World War III, which, granted, this is how World War I and II were both started, through yellow journalism. But we weren't alive at that point in time, so we didn't really get to see it. All we can do is study it. But we had a firsthand account of true yellow journalism through the AP. And it's crazy to think that it's still viable today.
All it takes is that spark, and for somebody to believe it. And if there's no way of proving it, then it becomes reality.
Yep. Yeah, that is very true.
Scary.
With everything out there, I guess even in this circumstance, every great thing out there, it must inevitably come to an end. And we have reached that point for today. So We do like to encourage and make sure that our viewers are hitting the like button and the share button on all of our content on all the platforms that we release our content on. Also, we encourage them to make sure you're hitting the subscribe button. That way you'll never miss a single episode of anything that we do produce. You'll always be able to come back and see Jamie's incredibly smiling face and hear that infectious laughter, albeit not quite so much this time. We do like to encourage our viewers to go to our website, that's conservatives.org, and become a sponsor. It is because of our sponsors that Jamie and I are able to continue to produce this content and spread it and share it out at the way that we do. And with the ultimate goal in mind of Jamie and I one day ruling the world.
Universe.
That too. It's like He-Man over here.
Yeah, start somewhere, right?
Exactly.
But not in the way the Democrats want to do it.
Yes, exactly. We do want to say a quick thank you to our affiliates, and that is Net News Networks. You can find Net News Network at netnewsnetwork.net. We want to say a quick thank you to Veterans for America First and to their media production arm of Vet Voice. So make sure you are searching for Vet Voice on every major social media platform, YouTube, Getter, Facebook, they're everywhere. And you'll be able to find other America First content creators there and really get a good perspective of what's going on across the country on the grassroots basis. And with that in mind, Jamie, would you like to give your final reminder?
Final reminder is we are 17 days away from you to making a choice about the future of America. And that goes into December 6th with getting rid of the false prophet. We have to get Raphael Warnock out and elect Herschel Walker.
Mm-hmm. This state is clean. I'm going to have to pull that. We're going to have to play that every time.
It. That's what has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We got to get rid of this guy. So there are going to be multiple opportunities over the next couple of weeks for everybody to get out, get involved, whether you're door knocking, making phone calls, everything else. But we have to do something. This is not the time to sit on the sidelines.
Absolutely not.
So enjoy that turkey, but on December 6th, you got to get back at that polling station.
Yep. And if you're not there pulling the lever on December 6th, make sure you are early voting.
Yep.
But with that in mind, Jamie, any final thoughts?
I don't have any.
Just blank?
I have something that I can't share.
Well, no, you can't not do that.
That's my final thought.
Well, this has been Conservative Talk, and we will